I think there's different layers of investments here. Like if you invest in the AI commodity or you invest in value layers above the AI, it's a very different game. So it's like investing in gold and investing in golden watches. I think AI at the fundamental level is going to be a commodity that everybody's going to use for everything. So there's a lot of value there. My name is Amir Shvat. I've turned to the dark side about 2.5 years ago. I'm an investor in a fund called Dark Mode. We invest in early stage startups. We invest in developer platform, enterprise AI, and the modern data stack. Before that, I worked in every developer platform on Earth. Started at Microsoft, then went to Google, worked on Chrome and Cloud and Android. Then joined a small startup called Slack 2 weeks before they launched their platform, and grew the platform all the way to 250,000 weekly active developers. Then joined Twitch to manage the API for Twitch, and then moved to create my own startup called Reshuffle, which got acquired by Twitter. So Jack Dorsey hired me to open up the API, and then Elon closed the API and got rid of us all.
Awesome, Amir. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Your background is phenomenal. You've done so much. You know so much. It's kind of interesting to see that you've gone from the I built these things, I'm the builder, to now thinking about how you can invest and support companies that are on the rise. And Dark Mode, according to your website, you're there as the early stage investor. So you're writing these, what is it you say, 100 grand, $200,000 checks to kind of start the whole thing going. So I guess you're looking at a whole range of very small companies really at that idea phase. What's hot right now? What ideas are the things that kind of get you excited, get you out of bed in the morning?
So the most hot topic right now is, I don't like the name. It's called vibe coding, which is the idea that you can vibe with an AI and create software. I much rather use the word PM coding, because I think that's a much deeper description of what the future might hold, which is me as a human, I'm the product manager and the AI is the developer, and we collaborate together to create software. So I think that's the hottest current trend that I'm seeing with AI.
So is that something you would invest in? Because when I see a lot of these comments about vibe coding, it's like, hey, yeah, I built this thing, I throw it together, and now I've deployed it and it doesn't work. You're sort of seeing, I made a joke on LinkedIn the other day about setting up a consultancy to fix the mistakes that are created by vibe coders. That's actually been done. There is a company called, I think it's Vibe Code Fixers, where the idea is you've thrown something together with these tools, and now you actually need someone to really build it out properly, to scale it, to secure it, all those kind of things. So where do you think that really sits? Do you think it's vibe coding is great for that MVP and then you need a serious coding team? Or do you think that the tools are going to get better so that vibe coding is going to become the right way to do things?
I think for the 80% of the boring stuff that we do day to day in software development, vibe coding would be amazing. Like if you look at coding, there's like 20% of really interesting stuff that is really complex, that is done in Google and in Facebook and in new startups that are like very, very cutting edge. And there's 80% of very, very boring shit that we call CRUD applications. Create, update, basically a wrapper over a database or a set of APIs that expose a set of data. And functionality and workflows. I think for that 80%, I think vibe coding would be amazing. And when people say that it's bad or like there's consultancy to solve it, it reminds me of a conversation I had with Vince Cerf, who's one of the forefathers of the internet. And he said that a friend of him brought the first phone to him in one of the meetings. And it was like 5 pounds phone, and it had a 5-minute battery life. But it was okay because you couldn't hold it for more than 5 minutes because it was too heavy. What I'm saying is that like we're seeing the worst vibe coding ever created right now because it's only going to get better. And I think that it's easy to to look at things and saying it's bad right now, but it's getting really good really fast. So I'm working on a pet project with vibe coding right now, and what I've been doing in the last few nights is probably better than what I would do with 80% of the engineers out there.
Okay, so you think an idea that really is starting to grow, and as you say, because we're at that initial point of it, it's as bad as it will ever be,
Yes, exactly.
and eventually be better. Because I was looking at some of the companies that you invest in. I think it's one of them's called Daytona, and that talks about running AI in like sandboxed environments, and that kind of feels like that works really well. This idea of vibe coding, that I can build something, I can throw it out there, and I've got a safe space to test it and find all those problems that's not going to break production.
100%. I think we can safely assume that a lot of the infrastructure for the AI has not been built yet, and there's a lot of opportunity there. And I'm very bullish about AI infrastructure because I think there's a lot of innovation to be done then. And Daytona is a great company. Another angle where there could be innovation is one of our companies called Heal, which is basically a tester as an AI tester, a black box tester. So you put it your website and you connect it to Heal, and Heal looks at the website and see if it interacts well, even without a spec. Just like crawling through the web pages and seeing everything is okay. What if you can connect Heal into vibe coding so that every time you build something, it already automatically tests it. So it runs on Daytona in a very, very isolated and trusted way. It's connected to Heal in order to test everything that you do so that there's an ecosystem to be built here around creation of software and the future of creation of software. And I'm very excited about that.
Okay, so the ecosystem you're thinking about really is a product person who kind of has that, I guess, user empathy, understands the problem, describes the problem in a way that a vibe coding tool will produce some kind of software. You then have this safe space to run it, to automatically start testing it, and then by providing guidance to the testing software, you can say it should do this, it shouldn't do that, should do this, shouldn't do that. That kind of human in the loop idea, just to nudge it the right way. That results to test feedback into the vibe coding tool, and you slowly, almost like right back at the start of AI, we talked about these like genetic algorithms where you would create a million different algorithms and test them all out, and then the ones that worked you'd keep and the ones that didn't you throw away. You almost have that kind of genetically evolving software where the AI is continuously tweaking the code and you're just nudging it in the right direction.
Exactly. I love that metaphor of organic software. I've been thinking about organic software way before AI. So let me pitch it to you. What if even after you finish building, the AI continues to evolve the page because it looks at people and at their interaction with the page and says, "Hey, if I make this button more blue, then people were more likely to click on it." And then it evolves that button to be more blue. And then it says, "Hey, maybe I can play with this copy and it will be more convincing to people." And then it does that. So I think there could be a future where pages are organic, not just at the creation of them, but on an ongoing basis. What if our very, very basic knowledge of A/B testing and what we're doing now with test groups is something that could happen live in real time, all the time by AI? So I think the future is what you described, but I also see a future where like the organic nature of software could evolve into the runtime and making software more delightful on an ongoing basis.
Now, the cynical part of me thinks that's a good idea, but what about the mistakes that it makes? And when we think about what drives engagement, unfortunately, you look at social media platforms, and the thing that really drives engagement is usually the more unpleasant end of things. Engagement is driven by emotions. It's things that make you angry. It's the things that make you want to get all ranty and shouty. And so, what if the AI realizes that, oh yes, I can drive engagement by putting some really spicy content on the site? You end up not just having it slightly more blue and we know it clicks more, but we've got all this rage-inducing content on there, and people click it because they're angry about it. So, what do you think about guardrails here?
So I think we should have guardrails, but also I think it needs to be tied into the outcome that, like, alignment of incentives are much more powerful when you come to think about it than guardrails, because guardrails are what you shouldn't do, and incentives are what you should do. And if you have kids, you know that telling your kids what to do is much better than telling your kids what not to do. So if the AI incentive is to sell, and it gets engagement by putting bad content, I don't think that bad content will lead to sales. So it will evolve and learn, hey, I get people to click, but there's no sales. So I should probably go and remove all that things that I put in, because that doesn't help me with my incentive. So I think if we align the incentives, I think that a lot of scientists and innovators now are thinking about how to build good incentives. I think incentives are much stronger than guardrails when it comes to the future of software in this area.
Okay, interesting. Because you think about a lot of these LLMs, they have this is content you can't talk about as a very strict. You just can't do that. It's just blocked, rather than here's an incentive for talking about other things.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, the cynical part of me does worry about who are the incentives for. So we think about the rise of like AI-based search engines. The incentive for the AI-based search engine is going to be towards directing you towards sponsored results rather than the right results. So if we have incentives, when we think about applications where the user is the product, like social media platforms, search platforms, the user is the product. The incentives are not going to be to the benefit of the user; they're going to be to the benefit of the platform who's making a profit.
I agree in the traditional sense of social networks. I think companies like Blue Sky are breaking that by making the customer not the product, but by trying to find different ways of thinking about social networks. So Blue Sky is trying to, if people don't know, Blue Sky is an open source network where the users own the moderation, they own their followership, they basically own the entire social information that they have. And when you move from one social application to another social application, you can take your followership, you can take your moderation preferences. That's the vision of Blue Sky. And in that world, the incentives are aligned because I own the stuff, so I'm going to choose the best solution for me. I think my generation made a mistake of making users the product. I think that created misalignment of incentives that at the end of the day drove us to the place where we have today, which is toxicity. And to your point, a lot of content that generate engagement, but is not healthy for us.
I'm glad you mentioned Blue Sky, because Dark Mode is actually one of the investors in Blue Sky.
Yeah.
And I must admit, that is now my social media home on the internet. I avoid the other site, especially because of its connotations, connections, and the person who runs it. And Blue Sky seems to be a nice, friendly place to be. So what prompted you to get involved with Blue Sky in the first place?
So I heard about the Blue Sky project while I was in the other network working for it. And Jack Dorsey introduced it to me while I was working for him building the API. And he said, like, we're going to have the API for Twitter, and then we're going to have another API that is basically the protocol that Twitter is going to use, and it's going to be open. It's going to be great. And I said, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And started working and helping the team. And when the Twitter acquisition happened and we all lost our vision of an open conversation on Twitter, I got connected to the founder of Blue Sky, and we had an amazing discussion about how the future that we want to build. And I showed her, like, hey, this is what I actually want. I want an open public conversation where developers have amazing APIs, where people could build mini apps in the application, where you can do all these innovation that I've seen happen in places like Slack and Google. Let's do that. And she's like, yeah, that's. She had the same mindset. So it was a very, very good conversation to start with.
Yeah, and so far it seems to be a great platform. I mean, yes, you are starting to get the bots a little bit because something's been successful, but just a lot of the controls you have, the idea of you are able to create a block list of here's a load of people that you should avoid, you should block if you want to avoid these particular topics, that's great because you can just go, yeah, I trust you as a person. I'm going to follow your moderation rules because here is a bunch of people I do not want to engage with. One click, and I've suddenly blocked a hold of people.
Exactly.
Having that moderation control is very powerful. It seems like a really fun place to hang out.
I'm enjoying. I'm putting a lot of my cat and dog photos there, so I'm enjoying my time there.
Yeah, I have noticed that if I'm scrolling through, I see a cat picture. Yeah, that's Amir. But it's just, I say, the fact it's open as well. The idea of this AT protocol, the kind of the underlying technology. There's people building all manner of applications just on what's it called, the fire hose, isn't it? Kind of just the sheer amount of information. But with everything being public, do you have concerns about privacy? If the fact that anyone can see everything?
I think privacy is a layer that the team should probably thinking about, and there's the first angle of that, which is DMs. So we have there's direct messages that are not public. I think it started like Jack was very adamant that everything should be very, very public. I think there's a lot of merit in private content. I think there's merit in private content for monetization capabilities. Like I think there's a lot of networks where private content actually monetize. Like Twitch, you had private sessions between the streamer, like private games that the streamer invited some of their followers. So like, there's a lot of healthy private content that could be used and monetized, which is fantastic. I think the team will grow there. I'm not a person. I'm not part of the team. I'm not part of the product team. But I think private content should be part of the network in the future.
Yeah, because as you say, it's a good way to make monetization where the user is not the product. It's a very explicit transaction of I am paying to see content by celebrity. You know, here's a private concert by singer that I have to pay to see. You're in kind of control of the financial transaction that you're doing, rather than, as you say, your generation, which did the whole, my generation as well, really, to be fair, that did the whole, you are the product, we're going to advertise to you and we're going to take money that way. So
I think advertisement it's very easy, but it's a horrible model because it creates a misalignment of incentives. Coming back to our conversation, like the smart PMs at Facebook and all these social networks, their job is to get you to stay more. And it could be that it does not correlate to a delightful or healthy interaction. It's just more. If I get you to stay more, I'll give you an example. If I open up videos automatically, you might stay more, right? TikTok has proven that. I don't think that that's a healthy engagement. But because the end goal is not a healthy engagement, the end goal is stay more, then those PMs do what they're targeted to do, just like AI. We talked about AI and incentives. Humans and incentives are also on the same platform. Give a human the wrong incentive, and they will do horrible things. Give human the right incentives, and they will do wonderful things.
Okay, so I think the general theme of this conversation is going to be the right incentives.
Yeah, I think that's important. With AI, for sure, with your team, with everything in life.
Okay, so I guess thinking about the right incentives, what incentivizes you to invest in a company? You know, you're thinking about someone comes to you and says, I've got this brilliant idea that I vibe coded last night. You know, what is it that you, as someone who is literally going to get your checkbook out and write a check with what is fundamentally your own money, what incentivizes you to say yes to a particular company? What are the key things you are looking for as you think about a good return on investment in the future?
I'm very, very passionate about platforms. It's also a personal mission of mine. I looked at myself did some introspection, and I found that I really like to help people become very successful. And I think that platforms are the geeky engineering way to do that. When I worked at Android, people were making a lot of money on Android. They become really successful, whether it's Angry Bird or it's Uber. Amazing things could be built on platforms. Same for Twitch, same for Amazon. Everywhere you go, you see platforms and people building on platforms. And I would say that vibe coding is yet another type of platform. So I really like platforms, but that's not a reason to invest. Liking things is nice, but putting your money in it is a different thing. I also think it's very lucrative to build a platform, that a successful platform, because if you think about all the amazing big companies, they are platforms, most of them. So, like Apple, an amazing platform for iOS applications. Amazon, AWS, everything is running. I'm sure what we're doing right now is a platform that is running on AWS or Google Cloud. So if you look at where the money goes into platforms. So it's also a very lucrative type of investment. So when somebody comes to me with an idea, I think about the team. Like, is this a person who can actually build an amazing company? The TAM, like the total addressable market, is this a big enough an idea? Is this a platform that is big enough? Is this a tool that is big enough? How many users will really need it? Is this a real pain? And the technology, is this a technology that is like interesting enough, has enough of a moat in it, is something that I can help with? These are all questions, and many, many other questions, but these are all the type of questions that I ask myself.
Okay, so when we think about something like Daytona, for example, that is a platform. It's a platform for running AI inside sandboxes. So you would look at some of that and go, yes, this is a platform that can help people. There is a need for this because we've seen the AI can create some absolute crap that could cause problems and run amok inside your production infrastructure. The kind of the total addressable market of some of that is anyone building AI applications, which currently is everybody.
Everybody.
How big is that going to get? That's enormous. And then the technology seems like it's a sensible technology, a sensible way to do things. So that's, as you're thinking about these tools, it's not here's a cool AI tool that's going to do something because there's a million and one of those. It's more about, are you building that infrastructure upon which we can build all those cool tools? And instead of getting the potential upside and all the downside of one tool, you can potentially get a small piece of all these million tools that are built on top of a solid, stable platform.
100%. I also invest in companies that are doing vertical solutions. So, like companies that are looking at, I'm looking at companies that are doing user research as an AI, or the company that is doing testing, for example, is another vertical solution. So I'm not opposed to vertical solutions if you have very strong subject matter expertise, still a big total addressable market. But I think platforms have proven in the past that they could be an amazing thing. And the last thing with Daytona, to your point, is that also Yvonne, the founder, is an amazing founder and is very, very happy to help, does a lot of contribution in the open source, super friendly guy to work with. So checkbox on the team as well.
Yeah, because I guess the team thing is important. You don't want some random person who's vibe coded a cool idea but doesn't know how to build a company, or at least is not open to learning, because not everyone can come to you and say, hey, I've got 10 companies under my belt, please help me. I imagine there's a lot of folks like, I've never done a company before, please help me. And kind of will want to not just leverage your checkbook, but also leverage your skills and experience. And then if you've got a great team of people who can engineer, Darkmo could then help with the founder side of things, the actual run the company.
Exactly. And I think another trend that I think we're going to see, and I might be wrong here, but I still think that it's the case. I think distribution, to your point, is going to be more and more important. So like building the app is going to be easier, but distributing it is still going to be a very big challenge. So like if you're building, you said vibe code, if you build something for doctors, getting doctors to use it, understanding the compliance around healthcare, understanding how to get a contract with a hospital, all of that is still going to be very, very complex. So I think the more time passes, the proficiency of go-to-market and getting a solution to be used by users is going to be the key one to success.
Yeah, this idea that I've got this great thing, but I need to really understand my customers. I need to drive their awareness of the product. I need to make sure that it complies with whatever regulations that they need. You kind of almost need that business person. We think a lot about having a business analyst or some form of expert in the field in these companies. I've worked in companies that have kind of had that. I've worked in banking where even on every developer team, you have a business analyst who has experience in the finance industry. I worked in logistics for truck companies, and some of the team was actually people who used to be truck drivers, used to run fleet companies. You kind of need that experience. So bringing that into a company is really important, because otherwise, how else are they going to be able to build a product that the users are going to want?
Exactly.
And then when you think about the scale of go-to-market, how much is AI going to power that ability to scale?
Exactly. And I think AI would be able to help us to a certain extent, but I think a lot of the responsibility is going to be on humans for a very long time, because I think it's much harder to get good distribution with AI than to build something good with AI. I think you can build something good with AI, but getting users to actually use it and love it, it's a totally different story.
As well, thinking about the relationships you need to have to get a big sale. So if someone's coming to a CTO, CIO, someone in the C-suite and saying, "Please buy my product," that's all human relationships. The joke used to be that all these deals are made on the golf course, because it's about human relationships. And having an AI cold call the C-suite to say, "Use my product,"
not going to happen. I can tell you, when I sold my company to Twitter, I had coffee with the person who bought us for a year and a half before we made the acquisition. So like having this type of relationship is super, super critical.
And AI is just never going to be able to do that. Which I guess leads to kind of the other obvious question. You've talked about the things you think AI is going to be good for. Where do you think AI is bad? What are the things, if someone came to you and said, "I've got AI product that does this," you'd be like, "Nope, not going to touch that with the barge pole"?
I think the current models are missing a few things that would make them really bad for certain cases. One thing, and I think it will improve, but currently one thing is consistency and predictability. So, for example, and this is a geek example, if you want to connect two systems that have different APIs, and you want to say, "Hey, run this workflow on these two APIs," AI will fail most likely than not, because these two APIs have an open API schema that is very big with a lot of endpoints. And for the AI to choose the right endpoint and then to provide that endpoint with the right inputs and then read that and transform that into a working workflow is still very, very challenging. And not just it's very challenging, it might work, but it would work 6 times out of 10, which is not good enough for most use cases. So I think in places where you need very strong predictability, it is a place where we still need to do a lot of work to get there. And there could be that these models might not work. We'll need to have different models. The second thing that I've been talking about, which is, for me, it's funny. I don't know if it's funny for other people. I think we're lacking agency. Everybody's talking about agents, but all these AIs don't have agency. They don't have an internal motivation to do something. Everybody's saying, "Yeah, they're going to act like humans." They're not acting the way my humans are working. Like when I work with humans in work, they wake up in the morning, they want to achieve something, they try, they fail, they continue. There's like an ongoing conversation in their mind to achieve something that they want. AIs are not wired that way right now. So I think this model of agency, where like an AI will continue to try and learn and try on an ongoing basis, is still missing with the current model or the current frameworks that we're seeing. And I want to actually have a AI human or a synthetic human that could act as a marketing agent and will continue to work until it gets its job done. Right now, doing all these prompts, I don't think that that's the best interface in the world.
Ask a question, get a response, not quite right. Ask another question, get a response, not quite right. Ask another question, and then that's not always a great interface. You can sometimes get in this loop of you say, "Yeah, the answer's wrong," and it comes back, "Oh, it's this." No, that answer's wrong. That goes back to the first answer.
I'm lazy. I don't want to do that. I want to say, "Hey, go figure it out. Look at this system. It's broken. Come back in as many milliseconds as you like. until you fix it. When you fix it, come back to me and talk to me, and have that agent have this agency of doing that and continuing to do that and figuring out what to do. I think that's what's missing, and I think we're going to see this in the next few years, like having agents with internal monologue and internal agency that will get them to a certain task.
Which I guess goes back to that idea you're saying of this kind of organic flow of evolution. Same kind of idea. It's not just a model as a whole is evolving your software product based off incentives. It is the model is evolving just the single conversation based off some kind of incentives you set that this is the problem I need to solve, and the model just keeps trying to evolve itself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why I love incentives, because incentives are super clear. Like you can't do that with guardrails to start to the beginning. Like, hey, saying, hey, you shouldn't do this is not as powerful as like, you should do this, go and figure it out. Like the best managers that I had in my life did not tell me what to do. They gave me a challenge. They said, hey, in this ecosystem, developers are not using Android. We should get them to use Android. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I love to do that. And I did a lot of actions to get that to happen. So I think that's how we should work with AI. We should have very good incentives and let it run its course.
One problem I think with that is the cost of AI at the moment. So if we've got an AI that's constantly trying, the moment we think about the big foundation models from the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, people like that, that's associated with quite a substantial cost. So again, thinking about, because you're the kind of person who's putting your money where your mouth is here, what are your thoughts on the cost of AI right now? Are you happy to write a check for someone who says, yeah, I'm going to use this new OpenAI $20,000 a month PhD level model? Or are you thinking about how folks can be a lot more cost conscious with these different AI technologies?
So the appropriate answer is you should be cost cautious and think about your P&L. But I think the real life answer is that AI is the most expensive it will be in the foreseeable future, and it's only going to become cheaper and cheaper. So if you're betting on AI becoming better and cheaper, you're probably making the right bet. And if you're betting on AI staying the same or being the same cost, you're probably making the wrong bet. So I'm okay with a founder that tells me, hey, listen, right now, what I'm doing is expensive. I'm still getting a lot of money, but my margins are low because my cost to the AI is high. But what I assume will happen is that AI will become cheaper and better. That is a bet that I'm definitely willing to take. So I think developers, when they're currently now thinking about the cost, I think the cost will be driven down either by competition within the US or competition from China and other places. I love the competition because I think the foundation models should be cheaper. And I think we should strive not to charge more, but to charge less for this. And if you look at most commodity are like that. You start by becoming very, very expensive. Sugar was extremely expensive when it started. People showed sugar in their tables to show that they're rich. And now sugar is everywhere and it's very, very cheap. So I think every commodity starts as an expensive commodity and becomes cheaper. And I think that'll be the case for AI as well.
Same with things like internet. You think how much we would have paid for a fraction of the speed that we get now compared to what we're paying now. So those economies of scale drive that price down. And I recorded an episode of this show a few weeks ago with Daniela. You actually introduced me to him, I think, at an API event a while ago. And he was talking a lot about this kind of cost idea. And he uses Grok. So not the Twitter AI, but their LPU platform. And that's running these open source models at a fraction of the cost. And so, as you say, it's as cheap, it's as expensive as it will ever be. It's only going to get cheaper because there's always going to be a competitor looking at ways to undercut. If I can host DeepSeek for a fraction of what you're paying OpenAI, you're going to come and use me.
100%. And open source is going to impact that as well. You're going to have free models. At the end of the day, the cost of computation is going to be the limiting factor. And even that is going to improve. So I think as time passes, we're going to have specific AI dedicated for certain tasks. that are going to be much, much cheaper for that specific task than a general AI trying to do that.
And I guess as well with the rise of the power of the home devices, we're looking at AI, we've already got AI running on your phone, AI running on your laptop. Microsoft are pushing this kind of Copilot Plus PC, for example, running PhiSilica on device. There's so much AI that you don't even need the data center for these days. And so how can you, as you say, very specific models? I've got a model that solves a certain purpose, and this runs on my machine. So there's zero cost to me because it's an open source model. And as long as someone is supporting open source development, it's zero cost to me to have this model on my computer and it's running locally. It's just the power that I have plugged into the mains, which is a few watts.
Exactly. Like when you talk to ChatGPT, it has the ability to speak Amharic. I don't think you speak Amharic. I don't speak Amharic. Most of the population doesn't speak Amharic. Why are we using an AI that could do that? Maybe we can reduce that and then reduce the cost. And then, like, at the end of the day, you can have very targeted AIs that are very focused on a specific task that do that task at a very, very low cost. So that's another interesting angle that we're seeing in the market.
So you would have an Amharic AI, and you'd have a Japanese AI, and you'd have an English AI and a Spanish AI, and you wouldn't have one big general purpose model that requires entire rack to run it. You would have this just does I can't speak. This just does one language, and that's it, and that's running on my device.
One language, and also like if you're talking to an AI and you're talking about your healthcare, that AI, that general AI, doesn't need to know about legal, doesn't need to know about a lot of other things. So I think the current model is very simplistic, and I think we're going to become more and more. We're going to be better at this at many, many different axes.
We're seeing that a little bit with coding models. So Qwen, the range of models that comes from Alibaba, they have a Qwen coder. And that is a very powerful model for coding, but it's very small because it's just trained on code. You ask it questions about the history of France, not a clue, which is great because you're not wasting parameter space. You're not wasting the amount of RAM you have to run it on information that's not relevant. You've just got a very targeted set. So we're starting to see that in the coding space. And yeah, as you say, that's going to grow further and further.
Yeah. And I think it will help with predictability. That's the other topic that we talked about, the predictability and hallucinations. I think once you have a very, very targeted model, the chances of errors are reduced as time passes.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time, Amir. It's been really cool hanging out with you.
Thank you for having me.
Again, very interesting conversation. It's kind of great to hear from someone who really is thinking hard about where is the right place to target their efforts in the AI space. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.